Hello everyone. My name is Elise. Welcome to my channel. I hope you're all doing so good today. We're here to do my next wrap up and I'm excited to do it because this will be my last wrap up for the first half of 2026. This is the one wrap up that I do like to have kind of like flush with the midway point in the year. So all of my stats and check-ins about goals and all that type of stuff are actually accurate for the midway point because I don't really do like monthly wrap-ups anymore. I just do them when it is convenient for me to film them and when I feel like I have enough books to film them, all that type of stuff. So we have 11 books here to talk about. I finally counted in advance because I'm so bad about doing that. We have 11 books to talk about. Like usual, we're going to cover the books that I have not shown in vlogs already. I've only had one vlog since my last wrap up, which was the Deep Vellum subscription vlog. So all those books will be at the end. If you've already watched that and don't want to hear more about those books, then you can just watch all the new books and hop off. So without further ado, let's get into them in the order that I read them, starting with the non-vlog books. First one we have is a chunkster. It is Boudicca's Daughter by Elodie Harper. This is published by Union Square. And I picked this one up because I loved Elodie Harper's The Wolf Den trilogy. And I knew I wanted to pick this up as well just based on how much I loved that. She is one of the reasons why in the last couple of years I feel like maybe I do actually like historical fiction because I've always kind of said that I haven't. But she's one of the authors that has made me rethink that because this is like true historical fiction. Like we're talking like ancient times historical fiction and I love it. So Boudicca's Daughter is taking place in 60 BC and it is following, in fact, Boudicca's daughter, at least for the most part. So Boudicca was a real historical figure. She was a very fierce British warrior who took on Rome around 60 BC. And this novel, we do actually start with Boudicca alive. So the first 100 pages, 120 pages or so, it's over 400 pages, so it's chunky, do follow Boudicca and her two daughters from their like conception into their adulthood. And we get kind of that like almost domestic side of their lives. While that's happening, we kind of get these touchstones of what's happening in Rome, and Boudicca's tribe has been working under Rome for a while now in order to keep the peace, even though Boudicca herself is very against that. But her husband, who is now their leader, wants peace, and so he makes a kind of like treaty with them. Everything hits the fan when Boudicca's husband dies, and Rome does not recognize female leaders. So Boudicca ends up declaring war upon Rome, and that is ultimately her downfall and demise. And that part of the story is accurate. And then the majority of this story is about her eldest daughter, Selina, who becomes a prisoner of war, and we follow her life well after that. So that's kind of the plot of this book. Now, I did not like this as much as the Wolf Den trilogy. I will say that off the bat. I think if you have not read Elodie Harper before and you would like to read her, you should absolutely start with that. For me, that is a 5-star reading experience. This one is like, it was good, not great. And it really reminded me of the Wolf Den trilogy in some ways, which like I didn't love. It kind of felt a little bit recycled for me, but I still think there was a lot there that I did enjoy. What I did like about this novel is really what I think Elodie Harper is best at, which is characters. She has such a way for like depicting a morally complicated character, and she does that with Selina. Selina does feel a little bit like Amara, who is her protagonist from the Wolf Den trilogy. They're both very intelligent, they're beautiful, they're like unexpectedly strong, and they use that to their advantage to try and manipulate their way into survival. So there's those similarities, but I do think the character work is still really strong in this one. And then I do think that she just does such a good job researching her books, and that really stands out. So if those things you really like, I would say this is also something you should pick up. But again, I would start with the Wolf Den trilogy first, because this one, it felt a little bit recycled. There were some interesting conversations about divinity. So Selena, on top of being a strong warrior herself and being very intelligent, is a seer for her people, and is supposed to get messages from the gods. And there is some interesting commentary about how people in leadership have manipulated divinity to their own advantage or to their own gain. And this touches on that briefly, but I really wanted it to go much further than it did. It felt pretty surface level where it left it. I just feel like this also didn't have the wide cast of characters that the Wolf Den trilogy had, and that did let it down a little bit, because the large family, the Wolf Den, all the women of the Wolf Den, made that story really what it is. And I know I shouldn't be comparing it, but because they are so similar, it's hard not to compare. So I would definitely still recommend this, but only if you've already read other Elodie Harper books and enjoy them. So that is Boudicca's Daughter. Next up, we read a very popular book, a sequel to a very popular book, but one in and of itself as well. And that is The Strength of the Few by James Islington. This is published by Saga Press, and it is the second book in the Hierarchy series. I don't know if it's a trilogy or how many books are going to be in it, so I'll just say series. And this series follows Viz, who lives in this fantasy world that is basically like an MLM, but for willpower. So you seed your willpower to people above you, and you are assigned to different hierarchies or triangles, pyramids, where you seed your willpower to the people above you. And with willpower, if you have enough of it, you can do magical things. Like you can imbue objects with strength or whatever it might be. You can also just have more energy and clarity of mind, more focus, that type of stuff. So you become much more powerful the higher up you are in the pyramid scheme. At the beginning of the book, Viz, the first book, Viz gets adopted by this wealthier man, what's his name? Ulsicor. Ulsicor basically adopts him and then immediately blackmails him, or makes a deal, blackmails him into attending this academy, which will provide you with a ranking and set you up into high political power, which would be advantageous for Viz and for Ulsicor. So he needs him to do well at the academy, and also at the academy, he is sort of like investigating the disappearance of Ulsicor's brother. So there's kind of like a mystery going on as well. Now, the second book, I think I liked it similarly to the first book, which is that it definitely had some things that annoyed and frustrated me. And then it also had some things that I really enjoyed and thought were impressive storytelling feats. So this one, I don't think I liked it more or less. It feels kind of the same, but still overall enjoyable enough for me to keep reading them. If you haven't seen my thoughts on the first book, or maybe don't remember my thoughts on the first book, the things that frustrate me about this series is that there's a lot of like movie magic convenience that feels unbelievable to me. So it almost feels like the author keeps wanting to like up the stakes like more and more and more, and like the stakes are high enough. Like it's just making it seem implausible, like what you're doing. This kid's life is already so hard. The odds are already so stacked against him. Don't just add random shit on top. I find that annoying, and it takes me out of the story because it's so unbelievable. It definitely keeps doing that. And I feel like the foreshadowing is so heavy-handed. There's like nothing surprising about the book. Like you know where it's going to go to because they've dropped like 9 hints about where the story is going to go. And I don't like that as well. Now, the things I really love about the series is that I feel like the magical world is so interesting and fascinating to learn about and well developed. I love getting the lore of the world, and you do get a lot of that in the second book, which is very fun and exciting. And then I also just am a sucker for like a magical school and trials. I love that shit. So this one has some more of that as well. This book does take a big departure in the way it is written. Maybe that's how vaguely I will say it. And I both liked and didn't like that in some ways. That's so vague, but it's book 2 and I would ruin it if I told you what it actually was doing. So there's that. The Strength of the Few. I am going to continue reading it, although now I am going to have a long gap between the next one, and I'm hoping I don't lose steam with it, but I would like to continue reading it. So let's see, next up, I have it down here, Fire Exit by Morgan Talty. This is published by Tin House, and I was so excited to read this book because I really enjoyed Night at the Living Res, which is his debut short story collection, although it really kind of reads like a novel, even though it is short stories. It just reads like a novel, not in chronological order. But this is his first like true novel, and it is about blood quantum and is something that I have been actively thinking about a lot. So we're following, what is his name? Charles, who does not live on the res, but he lives across the river from the res. And on the res live his daughter, Elizabeth, but Elizabeth does not know that he is her father. So he kind of gets to watch her from afar. It sounds creepier than it actually is. It's like a longing, like he longs to know her. But he made a deal with Elizabeth's mom, I don't remember her name. Maybe her name is Mary or something like that, a long time ago, that they weren't going to ever tell her. And partially that's because if it was actually reported that Charles was Elizabeth's father, she would no longer meet blood quantum and would not be able to live on the res, which is where her community is. So there's kind of a couple things that kick off at once. One, it's just like Charles is increasingly feeling like he needs to tell Elizabeth the truth, one for himself, just because like he wants to know her and to have a relationship with her. But also, this book is heavily dealing with depression and mental health. He has this desire to tell Elizabeth about her lineage so she can fully understand her story, in the hopes that she can have a better mental health journey than a lot of his own family members have had. And he worries that he's seeing signs that might be indicative of her taking a downturn like he's seen some of his family members have. So that is like really what this book revolves around. And we get this kind of like everyday slice of life style that Morgan Talty really does, that sort of tend to weave together to show a larger tapestry of a community and the impacts that a community has on one another. And I think he does that so well in Night on the Living Res, and he does that really well in this too. And I greatly appreciated his take on mental health in this book. I felt like it was very kind yet real at the same time, and does talk about how stigma is so dangerous when it comes to mental health because it prevents people from being able to actually get care and having knowledgeable support from their community. And we don't just see that with one character, we see that with many characters in this book. So I really enjoyed this. I do think I like Night at the Living Res slightly better. There are a couple scenes in that book that just like are burned into my brain and I'll never forget them. But this I thought was a really great addition, and I continue to really like his writing, so I will definitely pick up whatever he writes next. So that is Fire Exit. Then we read, this little tiny book, which is Killing Stella by Marlaine Haushofer. This is published. Well, I mean, it's published from New Directions, but I was gonna say it's translated by Shaun Whiteside. And I read The Wall by Marlaine Haushofer, also same translator, a couple years ago now. It was one of my favorite books of the year. I absolutely adored it. So I wanted to pick this up. It's just a tiny little novella. It's 100 pages. And this one is another one where, my leg's falling asleep. Hold on. Where I didn't like it as much as the first thing I read by her. I like The Wall a lot better, but I'm not surprised. I don't know. I haven't really seen anyone say that they like this better than The Wall. And she's definitely like known for The Wall. So this is about, I'm going to keep the premise really short so I don't spoil too much of it, but it's about our protagonist. Oh, what's her name? Anna, who is at the beginning of the book telling the reader the story of how Stella died. So that's in the first couple pages. She's like sitting down to write the story of how Stella died so she can try and move on because she feels guilt around Stella's death and regrets ever letting Stella in her and her family's lives in the first place. So we get the story of what leads to Stella's death all through Anna's eyes, and it's very well written. I don't want to tell you any more than that because it would be a spoiler because it's so short. There's like not a lot of plot points, but it's very well written. It has similar themes to The Wall, and it's talking about the like confinement of married life for some women in this time period. I mean, for some women still, but I think like she very much writes about that in The Wall as well, like feeling the oppressiveness of the roles that women are supposed to fall into in a marriage. She's married to a very traditional man, and she herself has 2 kids, a daughter and a son, and they take in Stella for like a summer while Stella's mom is off, I don't know, getting remarried for the umpteenth time. And it is this really sad portrait of a family life, like a bleak portrait of family life, the ways that society like strips us of our individuality, and I really enjoyed it. So if you liked her writing, or you're just in for something that's like a little bit depressing but also well written, I would definitely recommend Killing Stella. And I will be picking up her newest translation from New Directions, also same translator, the 5th year, hopefully sometime soon. So that was Killing Stella. Next up, we have another chunky book. We have Lost in the Garden. This is by Adam S. Leslie. I had to look because I didn't remember, and it's published by Dead Ink Books. It's such a gorgeous book. I just love it so much. This one I've seen a couple different booktubers talk about, and when I saw it in the bookshop at Independent Bookstore Day, I felt like it was time to finally get it, and I read it very quickly after. This is a zombie novel? ? I mean, it kind of is. It is like the slowest pace, most midsummer-like zombie novel. We are in this kind of like dystopian world where one day people had just started turning into, they call them ghosts, who are very zombie coded. They just kind of like mill about, and if you get too close to them, they might try and like hit you and attack you, but they're not like trying to like eat your brains or anything. You still need to be wary of them, but the world has kind of just like accepted that this has happened. So it didn't descend into chaos. Basically everything's kind of the same, except there's just like these ghosts wandering around. And one day you might wake up and your dad is a ghost and he's out in the yard milling about. And that's just how the world works. So it's got that like uncanny quality to it. And I think it really is playing on like the ways that we just accept things and can kind of in that way like become complicit in horrible things that are happening. And that was very smartly done. But we get this cast of 3 young girls. They're like young adults who, for their own reasons, are on a trip to Almanac. And if you read the beginning of this book, you know that the one thing you should not do is you should never go to Almanac. But they are all going. So we follow them on their journey and what happens there. And this is also very long. A lot happens, but it is this like very bizarro coming of age that shows that stage of life where you're really trying to develop who you are as a person and what your moral compass is. And we get all these kids making big decisions that have big consequences for their lives and other people's lives, and just see the messiness of that as you're growing up. And I really liked this. I thought it was such a smart take on a coming of age, and surrealist elements to this really added to like a new modern take on the like horrors of coming of age, especially as a young woman. So really liked it and would definitely recommend this book to people. So that is Lost in the Garden. And then do we have any others that weren't in the vlog? Oh yes, we do have 2 more still. So the next one is Mount Verity by Therese Bowman, and it's translated by Marlaine Delargy. This one I think is by Other Press, but let me just double check. Yes, published by Other Press. And I've wanted to read Therese Bowman for a while now. This was her newest release. It came out in 2026. It's very short. And this book has a lot of similarities to Olga Round's new book, the witchy book. I can't remember the name right now, in that we're following this like Swedish lore around Mount Verity, which is if you go to the mountain and you like someone asks you a question, you cannot lie or you'll disappear. Like the mountain will do something to you. And we're following from the perspective of, geez, what's her name? Hannah. When she's 12, her brother Eric disappears. He goes to Mount Verity one night with some friends and he disappears, and nobody knows what has happened to him. And we see how this impacts not just Hannah greatly, but her parents, her community for many years to come. And this is another coming of age tale. I did like the writing, but I will say like I was maybe slightly underwhelmed by this. I'm not sure if it was the length, and I just wanted it to be longer and dive more deeply into the story. But I do feel like the writing was decent. It talks a lot about art and the craft of art. So if you like that, this would be a good book for you. It talks a lot about like trauma and how you have to like keep churning over and over and over and over in your grief in the aftermath of trauma, and sometimes how art can be an expression of that. It kind of melds those 2 things together in the book. Yeah, I would say it was good, not great for me, but I'm glad I finally got to her, and I think I might try and pick up something else from her that is a little bit longer and see if I like it better. But this is Mount Verity. I love the cover of this book, so it has that going for it as well. And then I think there's only one other book that was not in the vlog. That is a poetry book, and that is Bluff by Danez Smith. This is published by Grey Wolf, and I loved this. I've read all of Danez Smith's other poetry collections, so it was high time that I finally got to this one, which I think came out last year. I think it might have been last year or the year before. It's so good. It's so good. He writes a lot about being Black, about being queer, about shame and eroticism. In this one, he is talking about Black Lives Matter. He's talking about the COVID pandemic, and it's just spectacular. And it is absolutely a 5-star collection for me. This might be in my favorite books of the year. I'm not quite sure yet, but it's so good. If you like any of the themes that I talked about, please pick it up. There are a couple sections that are more experimental than others. Like my least favorite section, I think, are these types of poems, but it's not very long. The last poem of the collection, like, floored me. It's so good. That is Bluff. It's hard to talk about poetry collections because it's like not necessarily a fixed thing, like a fixed plot that's going on. So I feel like I can really only talk about the themes, but yeah, it's so good. Pick up Bluff. It's amazing. All right. And then we have the books from the vlog, which I think from the vlog I finished 4 books. I don't talk about DNFs in my wrap up, so you're not going to hear about the DNF. First one that I read in that was Ladies' Almanac. This is by Djuna Barnes, published by Deep Vellum. This is a nonfiction that has been reproduced. It came out almost 100 years ago, and this was a ladies' almanac that Djuna Barnes published that chronicles 12 months and basically has like fables about all of her lesbian friends, and she's talking about being a scorned lover and being a lesbian, and it's just so funky and queer, and I really enjoyed reading it. I don't think it's the best writing ever, but it's just such an interesting piece of history to be able to look back on, and to imagine this being published like 100 years ago just is fascinating. So that is Ladies' Almanac. Then what did we have? What is my thing telling me? Oh, we had another poetry collection that was also fantastic. This is Terror Counter. This is by Fargo, Nissim, Tbhaki, and again, published by Deep Vellum. This I also really loved. It is, scathing, dark. It is about the genocide on Palestinians. It's about the way that Palestinian people are portrayed in media, in literature, whatever it might be, and it's really, really good. It's really good. So I'd urge you to read this one as well. This also had a couple of sections. One section in particular that I didn't really love, it is this like Gazan tunnel section that looked like this. These ones were not as much for me, but the rest of it I thoroughly enjoyed. So that is Terror Counter. Next up, we have The Animal on the Rock by Daniela Terrazona. This one is translated by Lizzie Davis and Kevin Gerry Dunn. And it is a metamorphosis novel. So our protagonist in here believes she is turning into some type of reptile. It's talking about trauma and grief and motherhood, and it is so weird and bizarre, but like really deeply propulsive, and it's told like in kind of like a journal vignette style. It also has little hand-drawn illustrations as well. So wacky, weird, it gripped me while I was reading it, and I would say solid. It's definitely solid. Will I read it again? No, probably not, but I'm happy to have read it. And then lastly, probably my favorite thing from that blog is Lookout by Christine Bel. This is published by A Strange Object, which is one of Deep Vellum's imprints. And this one, and I should say the first one is by Dalkey Archive, which is a different one of their imprints. This one is a dual coming of age between a father and a daughter, but even wider than that, it is about their family. So they are the Kinsler family, and then also their community. It takes place in rural Montana and really delves into the landscape of rural Montana in a beautiful way. Yeah, it's just a lovely portrait of how each person in a family can be so singular, even though they all live together and are in such close proximity and raised by one another. They can be so different and have unique relationships amongst themselves, secrets amongst themselves, and ultimately talking about love. Love is one of the biggest themes in this book, and I think it depicts love in lots of different variations and forms really beautifully. So this is just such a gut wrencher of a novel, a heartbreaker of a novel, and it's so well written, and I think almost anybody could pick this up and really love it. So that is Lookout. And those are the 11 books that I have read most recently. Please tell me if you have any thoughts about any of these books, if you're interested in reading any, if you already have read some and you maybe have different opinions than I do. And let me know what you have been reading lately, especially if you loved it. And I will see you all very soon in the next video. Bye-bye.